Hey, good evening, friends. Welcome back to the Business Masterclass. We are on the fourth session of the six-part series. We've had some fabulous feedback from everybody who's watched the previous three sessions. If you missed any of those three sessions, you can always go back to the website, which is rataindia.com, rataindia.com, and go to the event section, search for the Business Masterclass, and you will find all the sessions out there. And you can always catch up on these sessions. So today's session, the fourth session, is all about supply chain. And our speaker today is Mr. D.H. Roy. Hello, Mr. Roy.
Hi, good evening.
Good evening. Thank you so much. Great. Thank you so much for taking time out. Thank you so much.
My pleasure, Ajit.
Thanks a lot. To our friends, here's all about Mr. Roy. He has had over 3 decades of all-around experience in operations, manufacturing, new product development, and supply chain in engineering, appliances, and air conditioning industries. He's held critical and senior positions in ABB, BPL Sanyo, SIEL Aircon, and Blue Star. Extensively trained at Sanyo Japan on technology transfer, Japanese manufacturing systems, and quality processes at Rheem USA on production techniques. His areas of operations have been he's headed multi-locational manufacturing units as profit center with combined turnover of over 650 crores and a direct workforce of over 400 people. He's headed supply chain which has spent over 2,500 crore with a team size of close to 50 people. He's also headed the R&D team with a size of about 150 engineers across all product groups. His core competencies have been in setting up greenfield projects, process and productivity improvement, driving efficiency, cost reductions, system losses, etc., technology transfer, and new product development, and of course, sourcing and vendor management. Some of his notable accomplishments is he's setting up a new plant for switch gear for ABB, setting up the new plants for room AC in record time for Blue Star, which had a profitability in the first year of operation which is at the Himachal plant, turned around the Wada plant in 6 months. He's had some new product launches, which he's handled for room air conditioners, microwave oven, washing machine, and vacuum cleaner. A graduate in mechanical engineering, and he's completed his executive course in senior management program from IIM Calcutta. Member of a few CII forums, logistics and supply chain forum for Western region, and a past member of the Himachal State CII chapter. Fabulous, Mr. Roy. Thank you so much. And we are really looking forward for the knowledge sharing on supply chain from you. Over to you, Mr. Roy.
Thanks, Ajit, for lovely introductions. I really appreciate that. A very good evening to all of you. It's been wonderful to see all of you in a good shape and safe and doing and healthy. And I really appreciate that you all have taken out time in spite of the weekend that we have. And in fact, some of you must be having holidays also today, actually. It's my privilege to address members of RATA who have been the torchbearer for the industry. I must admit that my interactions with RATA had been very limited, barring few members I know with whom I've interacted on the course of my career, related to maybe some business or certain things. But by and large, this is my first talk to the RATA members, and I'm really, really thankful to Mr. Ajit for giving me this opportunity. Well, today, friends, I'm going to talk about the supply chain part. We have already covered on the finance, we have covered the R&D part, and today we thought of talking on supply chain part. Let me tell you, supply chain is more or less the philosophies, the strategies, the thought process behind doesn't vary from industry to industry. I work for MNCs in the engineering industries. I work for consumer durables. I worked in air conditioning industries. But the philosophies, the strategies, the principles, and the approach are very similar. So what I'm going to talk today is more of a common sense. I mean, most of you must be using it, but I thought it's a good platform probably to address some of the key things which I would have learned during my 30 long years of experience. I thought I can share some of the experience. Probably it would benefit the members. Today, I'm joined with my other team members as usual, Mr. Jitin Bambure and Deepak Thakkar. And we would be glad to address your questions. Actually, I would have preferred to have it more of an interactive session, but unfortunately, because of COVID, that's probably not possible. But you can post your questions, and we will try to answer as much as possible as in we can, whatever time limit permits actually. So let's have a good interactive session, and I'll put up my presentations, my PPT on the floor. Can you see that?
Yes, Mr. Roy, you're good to go. We can see your PPT.
Okay. Yeah, so today's the fourth session, as I said, of the Masterclass series, and it's related to supply chain. Now, what is supply chain? Of course, most of us know what is supply chain. It's basically how the material moves, actually. It is from the supplier to the manufacturer to the distributor and to the retail customer. I mean, that's the flow of the material that we know. And that's how, and for each step, there is a value addition happening in each step, and that's how it reaches to the customer. So we have an upstream from where the raw material starts, and of course, there's a downstream. Finally, it reaches to the customer. Now, at what cost, what value addition, at what price is what we are going to discuss today. How do we control those prices, what we should be doing, and how we can help generate profit for ourselves. So in my last 5-6 years of handling the supply chain and numerous visits of China, what I learned, the basic competition coming to for the Chinese product is the supply chain, and I call it chain of supply chains. Why chain of supply chains? Because each manufacturer has got a supplier and a buyer. So if I add all of them, and each of them is a supply chain within themselves, and if I add to it, right from the raw material to the customer, I would say it's a continuous flow of supply chain. So whether it's so material moves from tier 3 to tier 2 to tier 1, and finally it goes to the customer. So that's why I call it a chain of supply chains, and this is the key of Chinese success. What I've seen, each link of supply chain is competitive, is agile, and ensure that the product, and as a result, the end-to-end product is competitive and as desired by the customer. So as I said, from manufacturer or supplier to customer, the material flow is one way, and of course the fund flows the other way. But most critical between the two is the information sharing. Why I'm calling it information sharing is critical, which in subsequent slides I talk about why it is so important for information sharing, because that's what makes or breaks the whole supply chain, and makes or breaks the product, and which helps in competing in the market. So information flow is very, very important. Material flow is, of course, we know from it flows from upstream to downstream, and of course the fund, because every time you supply or you provide a service, the fund flows in the opposite direction. But the information is something which flows both directions. There has to be a continuous communication between the supplier and the customer. So today what I'm going to cover is basically the sourcing part, the manufacturing and delivery. That's the supply chain part. So each supply chain, if you break into a smaller supply chain, it is basically nothing but sourcing, manufacturing, and delivery. And of course, within manufacturing, we have the production, the manufacturing engineering part, the quality, and NPT. So within the four walls of manufacturing, these are the four things which govern the activities within the four walls of the factory or a manufacturing unit. As far as NPT is concerned, Mr. Bamber has already covered. Today, I will speak more about production. And subsequent sessions, that is the next Friday, we would be talking more about manufacturing engineering and quality. Now, supply chain is differentiator. Why do I call it differentiator? So typically, what happens? You can build a factory identical to your competition. You can have the equipments or the machineries identical to to your competition. But what differentiates between the two is the different differentiator, because from where you source the material, how you process the material, how you deliver the material, that's the key. So that's the differentiator. So even if you copy a factory or copy the machine, it's not necessary that you will generate the same profit as your competition. One will generate more profit, one will generate less profit, and that's the key. That's why we say that real competition is supply chain versus supply chain. The more efficient you are, the more agile you are, the more competitive you are, the more profit you will make. And that's why it's called the critical value chain, because depends how much value you are adding in the value chain for each activity, how much value you are adding, and against that how much expense you are incurring. The lower the expense, the higher the value addition, obviously the more the profit. But you have to mind that there are potential source of leakages. Obviously, when you are adding value through the chain, there's always possibility of leakages. For example, I mean, you assume that you are passing a bucket of water from one hand to the other hand. क्या होता है कि आप एक तरफ से शुरू करते हो एक चेन में, फाइनली जब आप पानी डालने जाते हो किसी जगह, आपको लगे, आप देखोगे कि पानी जो आपने फाइनली डाला है वो कम हो गया देन व्हाट इट हैज बीन originally the first person is carried. Though you have been adding value, but because of the leakages in the system, which you have been not serious about, you have actually given away some money which has flown out of your system as a result, because of your profit is reduced. So these, if once you understand the key things about it, and the way you manage these critical things, the way you manage your expenses, the way you manage your leakages governs how much profit you will make end of the day. I will elaborate more on these as in subsequent slides, that which are the areas which you need to be careful about, which are the areas we need to keep a track, and I'll try and touch upon with limited time that how you can control those leakages. Now, what are the factors that influence product cost? Because the product cost is important. The more efficiently you are able to make the product, the more money you can make. Because what happens, the raw material cost is by and large fixed, because it is governed by the commodity prices. More or less everybody is able to buy at the same price by and large, depending on if you have some advanced planning. To that extent, there could be a difference. And the end product is, of course, governed by the competition. So in between, whatever is the value chain. So one is the processing cost, and of course the direct product cost. So here I will touch upon the things which influences the product cost. Now, what happens typically? A designer designs a product with certain parameters, and then we manufacture those products, and of course the end product goes to the customers. Now, sometimes what happens, we may not be sure what we have designed is liked by the customer, whether it is in line with the customers. Are we giving the properties or giving the features that is really required by the customers? Are we spending too much money on a feature which a customer is not using? So designing, also whether the design has considered the manufacturability. So these are the internal things which normally we took. I would like to add one more parameters or attributes to it, is the customer attributes. How well we can understand the customer attributes. That's very important. As OEM or as a component supplier, you have the advantage. What advantage you have? That you know the customers. If you're OEM manufacturer or a contract manufacturer, you know the customers. You can approach the customer, try to find out what exactly he needs. Is the design proper? Is it over-designed? Or the design is in line with the facilities that you have to make the product competitive. So those are the advantages which you have, which typically a bigger company may not have to that extent, because his customer is unknown. Of course, he can get the data from the field, but a lot of money has to be spent because of that. But as an OEM or ODM or a contract manufacturer, you have that advantage. I would say that you try and maximize the advantage, which is where I was talking about the communication in the earlier slide. So communication is very important when you are making a product for your customer. So what are the factors influence the product cost? Scale. Scale is very, very important. One of the success factor for Chinese is scale. They have realized that if you have the scale, probably you can produce more quantity by using limited resources. That's why scale is very, very important. Typically, what happens, we tend to manufacture a multi-products. As a result, scale for the product reduces actually. So we should figure out, so along with scale, I will talk about the make versus why. Why I'm talking the two together, I'll explain. We have a certain manufacturing facility, and we should know that manufacturing facility is good for what kind of product or what kind of component. We should not attempt a product or component which will make the product expensive. For example, you may have a set of facilities. One of your another competition or one of your person in the trade also got a similar facility. But because of historic reason, because of some legacy and all, you will find that certain products you are good in making, where you make more money. Certain products or certain components, you do not make as much money as the other product. So can I align my systems? Can I align my customers? Can I look for those kind of products or components where I can get the scale? Advantages are what? That is a repetitive operation. Chances of making mistake will be less. Chances of rejection would be less. I will have that kind of scale to negotiate with my supplier to get the right prices. And what I'm not good at, I would rather buy from outside, and I would focus what I am good at making actually, by which we would be able to maximize your profitability. Next is product design. Product design definitely plays a big role. Now, product design, what happened? A designer in an organization would be designing a product, keeping certain things in mind. There'll be multiple people working on a product. They would come from a different backgrounds. They may not know what is your manufacturing facility. So it is important that you collaborate with the designer of your customers. Typically, for the organization, typically the procurement people and the quality people are the front runners, and with whom you will be interacting more. Now, they would never be in a position to deviate from the design that the designer has given, because they would not know what is the implication. So it's important that you should have an approachability, or you should be able to approach the designer who has made the drawings or the product, and ask him that what is the reason that can this be changed, because you know what is your strength. You know what is the material you are buying more frequently. Because it should not happen that you have to end up buying material which you are actually not using regularly. As a result, your buying cost will go up. So can I slightly change? For example, a thickness of a product. A designer might have given an X thickness, and whereas you buy Y material more often actually. The designer has given X thickness because he thinks that this thickness he is commonizing with other component, other product, but it's not really required. So when you talk to him, probably he says, no, I can definitely manage with this thickness also, or this material for example, for material for instead of ABS or whether HIP or something like that. So you know it's your strength. You can discuss with product designer that what suits you. If this suits you, then I'll be in a better position to make it. So that's another way of bringing down the product cost down. Fourth is the tolerances. Typically, each component would have a tolerance. Not just tolerances. Obviously, increase the cost of production. If the tolerance is tight, obviously the component cost or the product cost will be high. If the tolerance is low, obviously the product cost will be low. Now, what happens? Those tolerances sometimes may be critical, sometimes may not be critical. It is just a standard. But you, as a manufacturer, will never know how important that tolerance is. It's again when you go back to the drawing board, or rather talk to the designer, try and understand what really those tolerances are required or not. And most of the cases, or many cases, you will find those tolerances are not that critical. And then as a result, even a higher tolerance, if you make that component a product, it's fine. So obviously, it definitely will help you to reduce the product cost. Manufacturing technology, I need not say. You should keep upgrading your technology, because the way you produce it, I mean, if you have better technology, you should be able to produce a product or a component at a cheaper price. Having technology alone is not important. You should be sharing those technologies with your customers, that this is the new manufacturing technology I have got. These are the advantages of it. And if you design a product or component around this technology, not only your product would be superior, your component also will be cheaper. Because you have to understand that the designer or of your customer knows how to design the product that he sells. He may not be as good, because of may not know that much of I would say technology or processor of the component that you are making. You are in a better position to tell them or explain that this is the better way of doing it, and by collaboration you can make the product design or selection of the component or thickness of the component or selection of material, which will help you to reduce the component cost. Manufacturing processes, which you have to continuously keep improving on manufacturing processes through low cost automation, or using some technology by which you can improve the throughput. This has to be a continuous process, because you must understand that your competition is also working on that, and you should not allow him to catch up, because the way he catches up, chances are that your customer may move out from you to the other supplier. So it is important that you keep working on improving the manufacturing processes, which will not only help you reduce the production cost, it will also reduce your rejection cost, and maybe the chances that you might be using less material to produce the same product. Then logistics. Typically, most of the time, what happens today, if you get your most of the customer, what happened here, they are asking for FOR, where the logistic cost has to be borne by you. Now the key factor is how well you are able to arrange that. One, of course, is the packing cost, whether you should have a packing cost or packing material which can be reused, or whether it has to be thrown. So depending on the distance, depending on the component, depending on the reverse logistic, you should see whether we should have a reusable packing. Second is whether you can have a milk run. Milk run, typically, there's a reverse of milk run, in the sense that typically milk run is used in the automobile industry, where the customer's vehicle goes around collecting the material for the day's production and supply. Here, since most of the terms would be FOR, how do I supply my material in using one trip to various customers, so that I save on the transportation cost? Other thing is, of course, ensuring that your truckload is full. Also ensuring that the customer is not taking enough time or releasing your truck earlier, because if he holds your truck for whole day or he unloads the next day, chances are that next time the transporter will ask you for a higher price, which will impact your margin again. So these are the areas again which we have to be aware of it and keep a track of it. And finally, the capacity utilization, how well you are able to use your capacity. Now, capacity utilization again is a bit of yes.
Sorry, Mr. Roy, there's a very interesting question that came up. So before you go to capacity utilization,
Sure.
Milind Wagmare was asking, can you please define the scale a little more in detail, which is at the center of that factors influencing product cost. So I thought it was relevant at the time when you're talking about this, rather than taking it to the end. So his question is, what is scale? Please define in details. Thank you.
Okay. Scale basically becomes nothing but volume, actually, what I'm trying. For example, I would say you are making 10 different parts, and for each you have a order of, say, 100. So you are making 100 of 10 parts. So obviously you will have to process those 10 parts differently. There'll be a setup change over time for making those parts. For making those 10 parts, you have must be the bill of material or the metal content would be different. So that means when you're buying, you have to buy 10 different parts. Vis-a-vis, you assume that you are manufacturing only 5 parts and 20 each. I would go further, you make only 10 parts and 100 each. So what happened? Reduce the number of varieties if you can, because typically what happened, we have a tendency कि इससे भी ऑर्डर ले लो, उससे भी ऑर्डर ले लो, उससे भी ऑर्डर ले लो, क्योंकि हमारा प्लांट पूरा चलना चाहिए, अपना प्लांट पूरा फुल्ली कैपेसिटी यूटिलाइज होना चाहिए. मैं नेक्स्ट स्लाइड में बताऊंगा कैपेसिटी यूटिलाइजेशन का मीनिंग क्या होता है. कैपेसिटी यूटिलाइजेशन और कैपेसिटी ऑप्टिमाइजेशन में फर्क है. बट जनरल टेंडेंसी क्या होता है कि ये भी कस्टमर से ले लो, जो भी आता हम बना लेंगे. एंड टिपिकली फ्रॉम कस्टमर क्या होता है, आई नो दिस सप्लायर, मैं उससे 4 आइटम लेता हूँ, चलो उसको मैं और 5 आइटम 10 आइटम और दे देता हूँ, क्योंकि मुझे एक ही के साथ इंटरेक्ट करना है. सो वो अपना सुविधा देख रहा है, ही सीइंग हिज कन्वीनियंस कि मुझे 5 सप्लायर के पास नहीं जाना पड़ रहा है. बट व्हाट हैपेंस दैट योर मशीनरीज, योर रिसोर्सेज, योर ट्रेनिंग, द पीपल आर कॉम्पिटेंट टू मेक 5 आइटम्स. वो 5 जो नए आए हैं उसमें उतना कॉम्पिटिटिवनेस नहीं आ रहा. सो आई शुड रादर गेट 5 कंपोनेंट फ्रॉम द कस्टमर. I should look for other customer जो मुझे उसी टाइप के component दे, so that I can increase my scale of production. I can negotiate that scale volume with my supplier to buy at a competitive price. Does that answer that question?
Yes, it does. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
it does. Thank you so much. Thank you very much. Can go ahead. Thank you.
So coming back to capacity, so here I was trying to tell you actually, here also will give some kind of answer actually. So what happened, the more you start producing, the more capacity you use, your average cost per unit comes down. So there's also scale factor actually. जितना आप ज्यादा बनाते जाओगे, जितना कैपेसिटी यूटिलाइज करोगे, उतना आपका प्रोडक्ट कॉस्ट कम होता जाता है. बट क्या होता है, ये जो 2 लाइन दिख रहे हैं, जो डॉटेड लाइन दैट यू आर सीइंग इज अ स्वीट स्पॉट, वी कॉल इट actually. What happens that after some time the delivered costs actually start going up. As a result, average cost per unit also goes up. So while I'm talking of the scale, yes, scale is important, but up to some limit. After that, if you keep increasing the quantity, you may not actually be producing per unit. Cost may not be lower, and what we call it diminishing returns. एक एग्जांपल मैं देता हूँ आपको समझाने के लिए. Since you asked that कि स्केल क्या है, और स्केल का एक लिमिट भी होता है. सपोज यू हैव 1 acre ऑफ लैंड एंड आप उसमें से मैंगो ट्रीज लगा रहे हैं. आप 1 acre लैंड में आपने कब 10 मीटर या 15 मीटर डिस्टेंस में आपने मैंगो ट्रीज लगाए हैं. Now I'll explain both in terms of scale as well as the capacity. I will talk. Now obviously उसमें अगर आप आम के पेड़ लगाओगे, आप अगर ऑरेंज के पेड़ लगाओगे और दूसरे पेड़ लगाओगे, तो you have to buy different kind of probably the material to grow those trees. Rather than if I mango मैं बनाता हूँ तो मेरे लिए better. I'm not getting to seasonality factor just for the discussion sake, because you can say कि mango एक सीजन है, अलग सीजन में, but वो अलग सीजन में आप बनाओगे. एक सीजन में अगर एक बनाते हो, तो आपने सपोज 10 प्लांट लगाए हैं, तो एक प्रोडक्टिविटी मिलेगी. आपने और 10 बनाए हैं और थोड़ी प्रोडक्टिविटी मिलेगी आपको. आप ऐसे बढ़ाते जाओगे, आफ्टर सम टाइम क्या होगा, उसी 1 एकड़ में इतने ज्यादा झाड़ हो जाएंगे कि वो फूलेंगे प्रॉपर्ली नहीं फूलेंगे प्रॉपर्ली. नॉट ओनली दैट, आपको ज्यादा आदमी लगेंगे उसको सर्विस करने में, उसको मैंगो निकालने के लिए. मे बी बिकॉज ऑफ सो क्लोजनेस द क्वालिटी ऑफ मैंगो में ऑल्सो नॉट बी एज गुड. सो विच इज वेयर द पॉइंट ऑफ आई एम टॉकिंग अबाउट डिमिनिशिंग रिटर्न. एक बैंड में जो स्वीट स्पॉट है वो आपको निकालना. ये मेरा स्वीट स्पॉट है कि उसके ऊपर मैं अगर ज्यादा मशीन डालता हूँ भी हूँ और मैं कैपेसिटी बढ़ाता हूँ, मुझे वो आउटपुट नहीं मिलेगा. आउटपुट मिलेगा, बट द डिलीवर्ड कॉस्ट में नॉट बी विल स्टार्ट गोइंग अप. So what is that sweet spot where my average cost will come down? So it's a combination of capacity and scale. Coming back to the sourcing levers, you would have heard this word sourcing levers, which most of the customers or buyer will come. Like typically a bigger organization, the procurement people or the sourcing people have started using the levers which they apply on the suppliers. So I put both supplier and manufacturer because at one point in time you are a supplier, at one point in time you are a customer. So yeah, levers, how these levers you can use in both ways. When how those levers you should see or use when your customer is using those levers, and how those levers you can use when you're dealing with your supplier. Because क्या है जो, because the money is on the table is fixed. Of course, there are ways how to increase the money. I will talk to that later. But as of now, the money on the table is fixed. Why? Because raw material cost is fixed. जो commodity price है उसमें हमको लेना, उससे ज्यादा हम कम में नहीं ले सकते. And selling price is defined by the competition. The difference between the two जो है वो is fixed. So how do we share? Obviously, customer would like to have the major share, and manufacturer would like to have a major share. In the process, there's a tendency to use levers, how to maximize that and how to get it. One of the levers used by the buyer is vendor managed inventory. वो क्या कहता है कि इन्वेंट्री आपके पास रखो, मुझे जब जरूरत पड़ेगी तब मैं आपसे लूंगा. So what happens? The customer or the buyer is trying to reduce his working capital at your cost. You can use the same lever, of course, with the supplier, so that supplier also keeps material and you don't have to keep the raw material. Because अगर आप raw material भी रखोगे और finished goods भी रखोगे तो आपका working capital बढ़ जाता है. But as far as buyers से जो this dialogue करोगे, then you say that okay, I will keep an inventory, but you need to give me a firm indent or firm order. ये week wise you will be lifting whether you sell or not sell. You have to buy because you are incurring an inventory carrying cost, and you need a firm plan. And वही plan उसी हिसाब से you should share with your supplier, so that your supplier keeps similar way for you inventory which you will need for processing. So it should be an end-to-end inventory management. It should not happen that you are keeping raw material also inventory as well as you are keeping the finished goods inventory also. Vendor rationalization, other lever जो generally जो buyer use करते हैं. Vendor rationalization मतलब क्या है कि मुझे अगर 1 लाख लेना है, मैं 5 लोगों से लेने के बजाय मैं 3 लोगों से लूंगा. तो 3 लोगों से लूंगा तो यहाँ के स्केल आता है. जब मैं उसको ज्यादा क्वांटिटी एक सप्लायर को दूंगा, सो ऑब्वियसली वो मुझे कॉम्पिटिटिव देगा, बिकॉज उसका सेटअप टाइम, उसका वेस्टेजेस, उसका रॉ मटेरियल ही कैन बाय. सो ही टेंड्स टू डू rationalization. You as a manufacturer or supplier, you should rationalize. One is you should do the same thing with the supplier, and you should rationalize here with the customer. Whether you can get a customer जो आपको similar type of components या product बनाने बोलते, जो मैंने previous slide में बात की, exactly the same. How I can rationalize my customers while the customer trying to rationalize the supplier. How I can rationalize my customer so that I don't have to make variety of components or variety of products, but मेरा limited because मेरा resource limited है, मेरा जो training है, मेरा trained manpower वो limited है, उनको इतना, I don't want to spend too much money in buying more machineries or more equipment, train more people and have too many products. So how I can rationalize on the customers. Volume consolidation, again, typically जो buyer होता है वो big company, what they do is, suppose मेरे 5 plant है, हर एक plant में जो requirement मैं उसको consolidate करूंगा. So and when I rationalize the vendor, I can again get the scale benefit. I can ask the supplier to give a lower price. Similarly, you should also consolidate volume, because when you're dealing with 5 different customers, and since you've decided to make similar product, you can also consolidate volume and again offer similar volume to your supplier, जिससे वापस आपको competitive product, you can get the component at a competitive price. Rate contracts and reverse auction. Reverse auction, most of the company आजकल नया fad निकला है reverse auction का. I would suggest better not to get into that, because it's a very blind area. It's like what do you call it? It's like gambling, I would say. If you like to do gambling and all, you can do, because it's a totally blind वाली बात है, क्योंकि you don't know आपका जो competition क्या price में दे रहा है. आपको खाली difference दिखता है, but you really don't know how much it is. As far as possible, avoid reverse auction. Rate contracts, yes. I mean, probably you have no option if you have to go for rate contracts. You go for rate contracts, but ensure that the rates are linked to the commodity prices. Especially आज के तारीख में जब commodity का fluctuation इतना ज़्यादा हो रहा है, ऐसा ना हो कि आपका rate contract आपने fix कर ले 1 साल के लिए, and it is not linked to commodity, you will end up losing a lot of money. Of course, when the commodity price, you can gain also. But when क्या होगा, जब commodity price कम होता है, then automatically customer आपके पास आएगा, बोले अब तो commodity price गिर गया, price कम करो. and you will probably have no option but to do it. So to be on the safer side, if at all you have to have a rate contract, do it, but link it with the commodity prices, very clearly defined. ये जो prices है मेरे, ये आज की तारीख ये commodity price है, including अगर if you're importing, including क्या exchange rate आज की तारीख में है, so that any changes are there, according to that the price should be settled. Standardization, typically a designer would standardize certain components because he feel कि मैं अगर standardize करूंगा तो मेरा component cost कम हो सकता है. But possible, but that designer thinks at the stage of designing. Reality में जब उसका जो buyer जाता है, not necessarily that he gives वही set of components to same supplier. He might be giving it to 2-3 other suppliers. As a result, जो standardization का जो basic objective था वो खत्म हो जाता है. That is one. Second, जो standardization उनके लिए है, आपके लिए शायद वो standardize नहीं है, because he is given a component or a design or specification which is different than what actually you are used to buying or making it. So again, go back to the customer and say, ये ठीक है, इसके जगह मैं इसको अगर tweak करूंगा तो चलेगा क्या? Chances है कि चलेगा, but उसने design किया because he feels कि standardization से मुझे benefit मिल रहा है. But the fact is कि उसको benefit नहीं मिल रहा है because buyer has not gone to the same supplier. He has distributed the various components. तो standardization का meaning ही नहीं रहता है. Other things, I'll give an example in one of my experience in our one of the assembly plant, where certain screws were standardized. The length of the screw was just मैं आपको to narrate कर how it impacts actually. So they standardized the size of the screws. So सब जगह एक size एक length डाल दिया गया है. So there was a station जहाँ पे 4 screw लगते थे. After some time we realized कि वो bottleneck हो गया. क्यों? Because 4 screw लगाने के लिए जो operate time लगता है, वो स्टेशन असेंबली लाइन में बॉटलनेक हो गया है, और बाकी लोग, एंड दैट वाज गवर्निंग द आउटपुट ऑफ योर असेंबली लाइन. व्हेन वी स्टडीड एंड वी फाउंड कि उतने लेंथ की जरूरत ही नहीं, मैं 4-5 मिलीमीटर कम कर दूंगा तो कोई फर्क नहीं पड़ता है. ऑफ कोर्स आई हैव टू बाय अ डिफरेंट सेट ऑफ, बट एडवांटेज क्या है कि बाय विच देयर इज नॉट मच ऑफ अ सेविंग, बट व्हाट हैपेंड, मेरा थ्रूपुट बढ़ गया और वो जो बॉटलनेक खत्म हो गया. तो जहाँ पे 200 मशीन बनते थे, सडनली 300 मशीन पर शिफ्ट बनने लगे. So we have to, why I'm saying that's communication again I'm talking about. Communication is very important. Sometimes certain designs are made considering something in mind, but manufacturability में यार जहाँ पे वो बन रहा है वहाँ पे different तरीके से अगर बनाते हैं या different specification आता है, product cost can be reduced and a win-win solution can be arrived at. Cost sheets. I think this is one of the questions in one of the session. किसी ने पूछा था कि कस्टमर कॉस्ट शीट मांगता है, मुझे सारा डिटेल्स देते हैं, तो मैं सारे डिटेल्स दे दूंगा तो कुछ बचता नहीं मेरे लिए, तो फिर वो उसको कैसे डील करें एक्चुअली. सो आई हैव यूज्ड 2 words here, cost sheets. जब कस्टमर आपके पास आता है, he comes with the cost sheets, and typically these cost sheets are standard because वो वही cost sheet बाकी दूसरे सप्लायर के साथ यूज कर रहा है. सो उसका प्रोसेसिंग कॉस्ट एक फिक्स होगा, स्क्रैप फिक्स्ड होगा, प्रोसेसिंग टाइम फिक्स होगा, जो स्टैंडर्ड है उसके लिए. बट फॉर यू इट मे नॉट बी स्टैंडर्ड बिकॉज सम कंपोनेंट यू वुड बी बेटर ऑफ मेकिंग, जो मैं प्रीवियस स्लाइड्स में बताया कि डिपेंडिंग ऑन द मशीन दैट यू हैव, डिपेंडिंग ऑन द रिसोर्सेज दैट यू हैव, certain components you might be making it more competitive, certain components may not be competitive. So while the customer is using cost sheets with you, what you should do is ABC, activity based costing. आप जो प्रोडक्ट बना रहे हो उसकी कॉस्टिंग एक्टिविटी बेस्ड करोगे तो आपको पता चलेगा कि जो एक्स प्रोडक्ट ज्यादा में मैं ज्यादा मार्जिन प्रॉफिट कमा रहा हूँ या वाई में ज्यादा बना रहा हूँ, उसके हिसाब से देन यू मे बी नेगोशिएट, टॉक टू द कस्टमर से कि ये वाला जिसमें he doesn't know that, he will go by the cost sheet. You know कि ये प्रोडक्ट में ये कंपोनेंट में ये ज्यादा मार्जिन है, उसमें कम है. Try to take orders of component where you are making more margin and take less quantity of those components where you are taking lower margin. What is the last word? I'm not able to see. Ajit, can you read out, because that strip is coming, I'm not able to see the last
so
word.
you can just click on that hide. Can you just click on that hide?
Okay.
Just click on that hide, so it'll open. Yeah.
Warranty. Yeah, warranty. So warranty is again, customer asks for a warranty. Warranty 4 साल की, 1 साल की, 4-5 साल की, whatever it is. So 2 things. One is, एक तो अगर customer आपसे warranty मांगता है, you should try to get a back-to-back warranty with your supplier. Because if you're buying certain components from supplier and if your customer is asking for warranty, definitely you should have a back-to-back warranty supply, and the whole chain of course continues end to end. उसके दो फायदे हैं. When your warranty आप अपने supplier से मांगोगे, he will automatically be cautious. You will be also cautious when you're producing the product. Number one. Number two, if you have to give a warranty, ensure that the specification or selection of component is as per the usage, because sometimes the selection may not be as good as the usage, or usage could be different than selection and is bound to fail. You are giving a warranty to ensure that the usage and the specification and the selection of the component is in line with the usage of the product or usage by the customer before you give a warranty. Last but not least is the wave, which we call it value analysis or value engineering. This is a continuous process. When it's a continuous process, means you keep working how you can reduce your component cost, because customer will keep asking you reduction year after year. Typically every year मुझे 5% reduction चाहिए. अब कैसे दोगे आप? जब तक आप continuous process में इसको value engineering नहीं करोगे, you will not be able to give. And if you are not able to give, chances are that you will lose the customer, because their competition is also following. They are also improving every day, and they are behind your toes. So you have no option but to keep doing it, and you have to ensure that your supplier is also on his toes. He is also continuously innovating and coming out with the value additions, which is either value addition, same price में better value addition, value addition, same features but at a reduced cost. Now, as I was talking about, table में जो था वो तो है, वो clear है. Now there are certain things which are hidden, which is a hidden characters जो हमको दिखाई नहीं देते हैं, and that is where हम उसमें कभी ज़्यादा गौर नहीं करते हैं. I'll give you a simple example of a rather exercise. I mean, unfortunately, we are in virtual thing, so actual exercise मैं नहीं करा सकता हूँ. I'll just give an example. Each of you, I give you a 1 rupee coin to put inside your pocket, and I would ask you how you have done that. Now you said what a erratic question. I mean, ये किस तरह का सवाल है कि 1 रुपया दिया तो जेब में डालो, उसमें है क्या? तो हमने जेब में डाला है. Now I give you a bundle of 2000 नोट का एक बंडल देता हूँ, उसको अपने पॉकेट में डालने बोलता हूँ. Assume करो आपके पास बैग है, कुछ नहीं है, आपके जो बंडल आप डालोगे. तो 2000 का बंडल क्या होगा कि आप पॉकेट में डालोगे, ध्यान रखोगे कि बाहर से नहीं दिख रहा, गिरा तो नहीं, गिरने का पॉसिबिलिटी है कि नहीं है, किसी की नजर तो नहीं पड़ेगी. You will try to push it inside the pocket. But chances are 1 rupee coin you would have dropped inside it, and you didn't even bother कि ये पॉकेट में, मेरे पॉकेट में कभी बाई चांस कुछ होल है कि नहीं, वहां से 1 रुपये वो रुपया गिरा कि नहीं गिरा. Because 1 rupee क्या value? I don't care about 1 rupee. But now if I tell you that I'll give you that 1 rupee every minute, or rather I'll give you that 1 rupee every second, then तो आपके एंटेना खड़े हो जाएंगे. फिर आप देखोगे भाई मेरे पास सफीन जगह है कि नहीं है, गिरने की पॉसिबिलिटी है कि नहीं, क्योंकि now you are getting 1 rupee every second. It's not that once in a while. So that's why I wanted to differentiate between loss and leakages. Losses दिखते हैं, हम generally हम उसको focus करते हैं losses किधर हो रहा है. Leakages हम देखते नहीं है, क्योंकि लगता है कि नहीं है. But वो leakages अगर हम plug कर सकते हैं, then we can bring more value on the table, which will be completely yours or ours. Because वो leakages generally discussion के दायरे में नहीं आती है. तो leakages कौन से हैं? Rework. अगर मैंने प्रोडक्ट या कंपोनेंट बनाया जिसमें दोबारा काम करना पड़ेगा, देन ऑब्वियसली वन टाइम फर्स्ट टाइम राइट नहीं हुआ तो मेरा लेबर उसमें ज्यादा जाएगा. वो रीवर्क मैं कब करूंगा? जब मुझे टाइम मिलेगा, तो जगह रोकेगा. योर वर्किंग कैपिटल इज आल्सो लॉक्ड बिकॉज ऑफ रीवर्क. सो हाउ यू कैन रिड्यूस और एलिमिनेट रीवर्क? ओवर कंजम्पशन. टिपिकली जो आपके कंज्यूमेबल्स होते हैं, हार्डवेयर होते हैं, वो हम ध्यान नहीं रखते हैं, ये तो सी क्लास आइटम है. बट जो ऑपरेटर्स है या मैन्युफैक्चरिंग प्रोसेस में उसका कंजम्पशन एक्स होना चाहिए, वाई हो रहा है, विच इज मे बी 10% मोर, मे बी 15% मोर. बट यू सम इट ओवर अ ईयर टाइम, you will find it's a big loss. Not only that, कई बार because of the over consumption, आपको पता है महीने में इतना कंज्यूम होता है या इतने प्रोडक्ट बनते हैं, सडनली ओवर कंज्यूम हो गया, सडनली यू हैव अ शॉर्टफॉल, तो आपकी प्रोडक्शन बंद हो गई. बिकॉज of a C-class item, hardware or consumer, which actually you have not kept an eye on that. Idle run. आपके पास मटेरियल नहीं है या ऑपरेटर्स हैव गॉन, वो मशीन चालू करके उसने लंच टाइम पे चला गया या टी टाइम पे चला गया, या मशीन इज आइडल बिकॉज उसका जो रॉ मटेरियल चाहिए या उसका जो इनकम मटेरियल चाहिए वो बिकॉज ऑफ सम रीजन नहीं आया है, सो ये मशीन इज रनिंग, सो योर कैपेक्स इज देयर अंडर यूटिलाइज्ड, बिजली खर्च हो रहा है बिकॉज मशीन इज रनिंग आइडल वेटिंग फॉर कंपोनेंट, एंड ऑफ कोर्स ऑपरेटर इज आल्सो आइडल, सो दैट्स अनदर लॉस. ऑब्सोलेंस. जनरली हम क्या करते हैं कि हमारा चलो पास मशीन है, कैपेसिटी मटेरियल बना के रख लो क्योंकि कस्टमर को तो चाहिए ही चाहिए. हो सकता है कि कोई चेंज नोट आ गया, कस्टमर ने बोला कि नहीं ये तो अब नहीं चलेगा, मैं चेंज कर रहा हूँ. आप किसने बोला था आपको इतना बनाने के लिए? अगेन हियर इज इंपॉर्टेंट दैट व्हेन यू आर प्रोड्यूसिंग इट उतना ही बनाओ जितना कि आपके पास ऑर्डर है, इवन अगर वो वेंडर मैनेज इन्वेंटरी मांगता है. एंड ऑल्सो कीप अ कंटिन्यूअस डायलॉग विद योर कस्टमर टू फाइंड आउट कुछ चेंजेस आ रहे हैं क्या, सेल क्या हो रहा है, ये प्रोडक्ट कितना चल रहा है, इसके ऑप्शनल होने की पॉसिबिलिटी है कि नहीं है. बिकॉज ऑप्शनल हो गया तो ये तो पूरा का पूरा आपको फेंकना पड़ेगा. सो और आप जब तक नहीं फेंकोगे so आप ये होप में रहोगे कि शायद कभी यूज हो जाएगा. अगेन इट विल ऑक्यूपाई स्पेस, इट विल ऑक्यूपाई इन्वेंटरी. सो दीज आर अगेन लॉसेस. मशीन डाउन टाइम टिपिकली हैपेंस वेरी ऑफन बिकॉज हमारे पास मशीन मेंटेनेंस करने का टाइम नहीं है. हमेशा हम फायर फाइटिंग में चल रहे हैं. बना के दे दो. पीरियोडिक मेंटेनेंस हम प्लान बनाते हैं, मशीन को प्रॉपर्ली मेंटेन नहीं करेंगे, डाउन टाइम करेंगे. इट्स लाइक पेनी वाइज. मैं 1 घंटा बचाने के चक्कर में पता चला मेरी मशीन अगले महीने 1 दिन 2 दिन के लिए डाउन नहीं चली. सो नॉट ओनली मशीन डाउन टाइम हो गया, उसमें से जो कंपाउंड निकल रहा है बाकी कंपाउंड्स वेट कर रहे हैं क्योंकि बाकी बना के रेडी है, बट आप सेट में डिस्पैच नहीं कर सकते हो, या अगर असेंबली कर रहे हो तो असेंबली नहीं कर सकते हो क्योंकि एक कंपाउंड उसमें से आया नहीं बिकॉज मशीन टाइम डाउन है. सो इट्स नॉट ओनली दैट यू आर लूजिंग प्रोडक्शन फ्रॉम दैट मशीन, योर कंप्लीट इन्वेंटरी इज ब्लॉक्ड, your money is blocked, you are not able to turn that money. चेंज ओवर. जब मल्टी प्रोडक्ट बनाओगे तो ऑब्वियसली चेंज ओवर आपको ज्यादा करने पड़ेंगे, कम वैरायटी बनाओगे तो चेंज ओवर कम करने पड़ेंगे. So again I was talking about how you should make limited component which is more competitive, where you are good at making it. स्केल वहां बढ़ाना है. स्केल बढ़ाओगे तो ऑटोमेटिकली चेंज ओवर्स कम होंगे. स्केल कम रहेगा तो चेंज ओवर आपको ज्यादा करने पड़ेंगे क्योंकि आप वैरायटी बढ़ा रहे हैं. तो यहाँ पे भी चेंज आपका जो स्केल का फायदा है. सेकेंड इज चेंज ओवर अनअवॉइडेबल, बट हाउ यू कैन रिड्यूस द चेंज ओवर. क्योंकि चेंज ओवर टाइम बढ़ेगा तो ऑब्वियसली आपका प्रोडक्टिविटी और आपका जो यूसेज है उस मशीन का उसमें से कम हो जाएगा. प्रोसेस रिजेक्शन, आई नीड नॉट टेल यू, अगर रिजेक्शन आपके बड़े हैं तो ऑब्वियसली यू विल बी लूजिंग मनी ऑन दैट. Scrap and overproduction. Scrap is also of course known to everybody. Overproduction. Now what happens? मशीन खाली पड़ा है तो overproduction कर लेते हैं, but overproduction करोगे तो आपका मनी ब्लॉक्ड है या वर्किंग कैपिटल इज ब्लॉक्ड, एंड इट इज अ चांसेस कि कल के दिन वो ऑब्सोलेंट भी हो जाए. So these are the leakages which normally we don't address or tend to keep a track of it, and these are not appearing in any of the cost sheets actually. If you see, none of them would rejection probably आपका कॉस्ट शीट में आएगा, बट हो सकता है कि कस्टमर ने आपको 1% रिजेक्शन दिया बट आपका 1.5% रिजेक्शन हो रहा है. स्क्रैप हो सकता है आपने आपको दिया स्क्रैप ज्यादा हो रहा है. सेकेंडली ऑल्सो यू सी ट्राई टू, अगर कोई प्रोडक्ट या कंपोनेंट बना रहा है उसमें स्क्रैप निकलता है, कैन आई यूज दिस स्क्रैप टू केटर टू मेक अ कंपोनेंट फॉर सम अदर कस्टमर और फॉर द सेम कस्टमर, find out whether you have any component by which this metal can be used. So these are things, if you can avoid those leakages, definitely your bottom line will go up. Inefficiencies. As an entrepreneur, you would like to run fast. You would like to run at a speed, but you are constrained by a lot of inefficiencies which is built inside the system. Concept efficiency, inefficiency, productivity. Of course, if your productivity is not up to the mark, obviously your waiting time will be more, your customers will be unhappy, you will not be able to deliver on time. Layout has to be efficient. मशीन के बीच में डिस्टेंस अगर ज्यादा है, मेटल का ट्रैवल टाइम ज्यादा है, आदमी का ट्रैवल टाइम ज्यादा है, या एक प्रोसेस से दूसरे प्रोसेस में जाने के लिए गैप ज्यादा है, सो हाउ आई कैन मेक सेल स्ट्रक्चर, हाउ कैन सेकेंडली समटाइम व्हाट हैपन 3-4 मशीन, जो मैं अगले सेशन में बात करूंगा अबाउट दैट, कम्स अंडर मैन्युफैक्चरिंग इंजीनियरिंग, दैट हाउ वन ऑपरेटर कैन by changing the layout, how one operator can run 3 or 4 machines rather than one operator running one machine only. So दो फायदे हैं. एक तो आपका मशीन जो रन कर रहा है, it's more productive रन कर रहा है, number of people operators कम हो जाते हैं, आपका space requirement भी कम हो जाती है. Poor planning, of course, to do with your scheduling and planning, material जो आपका है वो production और planning के हिसाब से है कि नहीं है, customer की जो requirement उसके हिसाब से आपका material आ रहा है कि नहीं आ रहा. This of course a very common sense that we do, but we may not have the right software to ensure, and or we may not be doing a proper planning to ensure that we deliver on time. Untrained staff means if the staff अगर properly trained नहीं है, मतलब उसको पता we should ensure that what he is doing, that he is capable of doing, he's trained to do that kind of product, or even at the staff level whether he has got. Typically क्या होता है कि we tend to hire a person कि चलो ये बंदा थोड़ा सस्ता मिला हमको ले लेते हैं. We should see how much value he is adding by coming. So even if I have to pay slightly more to a staff or a person who can give me more value than what I am paying, is what we should be looking at it, and avoid overstaff. Because sometimes we हम 10 आदमी लेंगे तो हमारा काम जल्दी होगा. Not necessarily. You have to see what is the optimum staff required to convert your material into what is desired. Overstaff भी ठीक is not also advisable, because overstaff में sometimes क्या होता है कि किसकी क्या responsibility, वो एक issue हो जाता है. वो सोचता है वो करेगा, मैं सोचूंगा मैं करूंगा. Not only it adds to your wage bill, but also it brings in inefficiencies. And of course, there could be communication. The more the number of people, the more chances of communication going wrong. Now here I talk about since I have worked very closely with the Chinese and with the Japanese, and the last 5-6 years I've seen the Chinese manufacturer, Chinese company very closely. I thought I will try to compare the two. Both of them are success actually, because एक सेशन में किसी ने पूछा था कि हमारा जो प्रोडक्ट बनता है वो क्वालिटी कैसा होना चाहिए, कॉस्ट कैसा होना चाहिए. So there are two Chinese way. You have to decide कि which path you want to take. Of course, what I have made here is मेरे experience से जो है उसमें कुछ हो सकता है कि आपके विचार से थोड़ा different होगा, but I just try to compare the two ways of looking at manufacturing, and both are a success story. Japanese also have a success story. Chinese also have a success story, but उनकी Chinese की success story कहाँ है, Japanese की success story कहाँ, that I am trying to compare. So Chinese work on economies of scale. Again, I am answering that question कि economy of scale, उनको पता है जब volume बढ़ेगी तो मेरे को economy आती है actually, because same with less number of people, with less investment, I can produce much more quantity. As a result, I can keep a lower cost. Japanese believe on technology, which is why now you will see that most of the appliance has moved to Chinese factories, whereas technology products Japanese are making. Typically, if you see, like Japanese have moved up the value chain, so they are making more products where the technology is more actually, because they know that they cannot cope up with the Chinese, and economy skills are important. Chinese processes are very simplified, whereas Japanese are process oriented. The difference between me is Chinese have a habit of process कैसे simplify करके मैं speed बढ़ा सकूं. Japanese believe on पूरा, because since they have a technology and a variety, so they ensure that the process of making each and every process are more reliable. Japanese again value for money. They will design a product, they will make a product which will last for exactly the time which is content for. Whereas Japanese product would be more reliable and safe. To give an example of my experience, when I was with BPL, we used to make a lot of products, and most of the products being an employee, I had at home, like washing machine ka lo, TV ka lo, refrigerators ka lo, microwave, vacuum cleaner. All of them कुछ भी खराब नहीं हुए. मुझे finally उनको sell करना पड़ा, because technology was changing, and then you wanted a better product, and also I finally had to sell it and buy. None of them had broken down. 5 साल 7 साल, some product 10 years. In fact, vacuum cleaner even I am using even today, 20 साल हो गया है. But who will buy that product today? No one, because even whether you like or not, you would like to throw that product. So that is why the Chinese have appliances which they have picked up well. But yes, products which are more technology oriented, reliability is important. Like typically you will say automobile, we still would not prefer the Chinese car. Chinese aerospace, these are areas where Japanese would be preferred, but not the Chinese. So you have to decide the product or component जो आप बना रहे हो वो Chinese way में बनाना है या Japanese way में बनाना, depends on what customer you are catering to, what kind of prices you are getting, and what kind of product you are making. Chinese, of course, as you know, agile and action oriented, because you have to be if you're so depending what path you take. Japanese are detailed deliberation because they know it has to be reliable, it has to be long lasting, so automatically they do a lot of deliberation on the design processes, product, material selection, and all. Chinese have got a high risk taking ability. They will go and put in the market, देखा जाएगा कुछ होगा तो they will do the course correction as they move. However, Japanese are risk averse. Chinese again are focus similar products. Again, I'm talking about scale. Similar type of product बनाऊंगा मैं, so that I can get the benefit of scale. Whereas Japanese are focus more on process because they know they can make variety. They will focus on process so that they can cater to the variety, whereas Chinese would prefer and of course Chinese can execute on ambiguity and Japanese way of forming. So just I thought of making some comparison because I've seen them very closely. I thought to put it up. Both of them are right. Both of them are success story. You have to decide where you fall and which is the right approach you should be taking. Industry challenges, because it's already 7:26, I'll quickly run through it. All of you are aware what are the industry challenges that we have. Pricing pressure, changes in customer preference, new environment, all those things are there. So, of course, all of us know what are the industry challenges, especially related to air conditioning industry. But the good part is that the government is coming out with the PLI benefit. So there's a proposed scheme. So there are categories of large investment and normal investment. Large investment are even between 100 to 600 crores. Normal investment 50 to 300 crores. Segments are AC component, high value, intermediates, and low value. इसमें अभी थोड़ा clarity आया नहीं है, जहाँ पे उन्होंने ये भी लिखा है some sub assembly. So sub assembly means what? Its clarity is not come. Maybe in subsequent days, that clarity will come. But the investment period is from this financial year to FY27, and incentives that you will get from financial FY23 to 28. Broad components जो अभी सामने आए हैं, there was a compressor, BLDC motors, PCB, service valve, cross flow fan, copper tube, aluminum foil. So depending on where your competencies or if you're looking for some kind of investments, or depending on which area you have the expertise or technology type, you can decide which component you should will benefit you if you take it. And to support this PLI benefit, government is of course will be coming out with a phased manufacturing program to encourage the local industries. They have proposed increase of custom duty with every passing year. So you can see current जो basic custom duty है varies from 7.5% to 20%, and going forward each year they will keep on increasing. So which will automatically make the local manufacturing competitive. And I think with the PLI, obviously, if PLI incentive alone may not be good enough until and unless government has got some kind of barrier to control the import. So these are the barriers that government intend to put. In addition to that, of course, the non-tariff barriers like the ISI mark and few other barriers, of course, the government intend to put. So ये सब ज्ञान तो हो गया. Then what we should do? What are the way forward? I just listed some of them. Unfortunately, it's short of time, so probably I won't be able to explain more in detail. Have your long-term and short-term strategy. What you are good at. First, you have to find out what you are good at. How and what should be a strategy to grow, and what kind of skill sets you would like to develop, which will have a synergy to the facilities, the competency, and your product line that you have. Have a risk mitigation plan. You should not depend on obviously only on one customer. You should have few customers, but not too many customers. You should again have suppliers, so that one component you should not be buying from one supplier, but again don't go to too many suppliers because you will not get the scale of benefit. And of course industry, because AC is it's got a small window. So whether you can diversify into other industries, but again ensuring that the component or product, of course not the product, but here more of a component, whether those components have got synergy or similar, or you can use the existing facilities to make those components, but for different industries. Because there's no point investing again for a different industry, because which is also again seasonal. Working closely with the customer, I have already elaborated this part very much, why it is important to work closely with them. Have clear sourcing strategy, build partners, whichever supplier sourcing जाओगे, build long-term partners so that when there are two current situation, when the dynamics are there and when the availability of material is limited, material costs are going up, having a long-term strategy with some key partners always helps. Devise method of monitoring leakages. जो leakages जो मैंने बात की है, set a system. उसको कैसे मैं पहले तो उसका monitor करना शुरू करो, because first thing is monitoring, then you start taking action. When you start monitoring those leakages, you realize how much money you're losing in the whole process actually. So set a system to first start monitoring. Go step by step. पहले मॉनिटर करना चालू करेंगे, देन यू से कि कहाँ पे ज्यादा लीक है. यू विल हैव 10 प्लेसेस, ऑब्वियसली 10 जगह आप इमीडिएटली आप तो उसमें काम नहीं कर सकते हो. टेक द टॉप 2 or 3 जिसमें मैक्सिमम लीकेजेस है, देन यू स्टार्ट working on controlling it. Same thing, productivity. First, monitor for productivity. Each and every machine, each and every equipment, each and every resources, you should be tracking and monitoring the productivity. Sometimes what happens that we may not be tracking each and every productivity. So you have to go to the level of monitoring, make an Excel sheet or some kind of chart where daily basis में आप monitor करो कि or certain critical machines probably you have to monitor on a month on hourly basis ki is it giving the desired result, because ये बहुत महंगा machine है. Am I getting desired output from on that? Focus on planning and schedule and go for ERP. If you're a big company, if you have a complex structure and too many suppliers, too many customers, which is avoidable, but ERP would definitely help in your planning and scheduling. Otherwise, you will be sitting with a lot of inventory, a lot of your working capital will get blocked. So this is very, very important if you're having too bigger operation or too complex an operation. Make preventive maintenance a schedule. Don't deviate from that. I explained you the benefits of it. And if you don't do it, the money that you lost. Keep challenging status quo. आज मैं कर रहा हूँ तो उसको और कैसे बेहतर करूँ, और कैसे improve करूँ, कैसे उसमें से मैं और cost कम कर सकूँ, या how do I earn more money out of it. And last but not least, the low cost automation. But even for low cost automation, be clear that whether it is saving money or not. It is not just to improve productivity, because if it improve productivity, you may end up, which I will again talk in the next session, it's a double-edged sword, because productivity तो आपको मिलेगी, but पता चला आपको उतनी जरूरत ही नहीं है, and your working capital will get blocked. So automation तभी है if it reduces your total cost of operation, then only you go for low cost automation. So in short, what the focus area is, what we call it in a manufacturing language, PQC DSM. If you are able to focus these 7 areas or 6 areas, is what you should, then automatically your bottom line will improve. It's a lot of tools are available to ensure that these things are controlled and monitored, and you get best out of it. Productivity, quality, cost, delivery, safety. These are the key parameters, whether you're your own operation you talk about, or even if you're talking to a supplier, if you can control and focus these areas, which will improve your bottom line, because the rest of the things, as I explained, are already given. So today, maybe I'll try and speak more on this part in next Friday, which will probably help you to in the manufacturing engineering session, and probably I'll try and elaborate whatever time I have available. So thanks a lot to give that much of time and have a patient hearing. We're ready to take any questions that you would have.
Thank you, Mr. Roy. Thank you so much. Fabulous presentation. Before I start taking the questions for our viewers, we also have both our other panelists here. So I'd like to bring them on. Thank you, Mr. Bambure, for joining us to take on some questions. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Deepak Thakkar, for actually joining us. I know it was not your session, but both of you all have taken time out to be here to answer any questions which have come up here.
Yeah, it was a lot of learning for me personally.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, great. So we have one question which has come from, that's for you, Mr. Roy. He's Mr. Krishna Prasad. He's actually from Fridge House, Bangalore. His question is, today you have spoken from the manufacturing perspectives. Do you have anything to say from trading perspective? Because there's a lot of components that is sourced and sold to OEMs and a lot of other MSMEs or other manufacturing companies. Do you have any inputs from a trading perspective?
trading perspective, when you're saying means the trader buying from their supplier. That's what you're saying, right?
Yeah. So he must be sourcing a lot of materials, primarily imports. He must be importing from various parts of the country, multiple factories. That's also he's an important connect in the supply chain. So you say
So I talked about few levers. One is, of course, as it was a consolidation. Whether you can consolidate requirement of various customers and go to a limited number of suppliers. So consolidation, rationalization is working both hand to hand, in the sense that you consolidate requirement, you might be catering to 5 customers. Can I have have a consolidation of that requirement and go to a customer, to a supplier, to negotiate with them? Again, the scale is important. If I'm able to give more share to the supplier, probably I'll be able to get a better price from him. So that's one of the few levers he can use. Again, depending on his operation, if he's a big company, is able to handle too many products, too many customers, fine. But again, I would say that better. If you can handle, fine. If you're finding that difficult, probably you can decide on who are your customers, where you are getting the best buck of your money, actually. So it's 80-20. I mean, if 80% of customers, say 20% customers giving 80%, then should I increase more my stake with them rather than catering 20% customer, because that 20% is taking 70-80% of my energy and resource and all, actually. So I think these are a few things probably they can use it to maximize the return.
Yeah, I can add to what DS said. It's very also good for a trading organization like Fridge House to make a margin and volume metrics. So you have one side volume, so there's a low volume and high volume, and second side is the margin, low margin, high margin. Okay, so obviously your focus has to be on high margin, high volume business, and relatively in that order, start leaving out low margin, low volume business. Drop time. If you do this analysis, things will start churning out. So.
Yeah, Mr. Tucker, Krishna Prasad just put a message right now saying that you would exactly know what kind of products that he's dealing in. He's from House, Bangalore. So he's saying, I don't have to explain. He knows it exactly what I'm dealing in. Awesome. Too good. Okay, great. So, Mr. Bambure, I have a question for you. It says, what should be the approach to ensure quality supplies from overseas suppliers? Any tips on balancing quality and price? Since we were on that question, I thought that's a right, appropriate one to ask. What is it? What should be the approach? You're muted, sir. 1 second, Mr. Bambure, you're muted.
So partially, Roy has covered it, but like the levers that Roy said is we need to build a long-term relation, even if you want to import it, because it is not a spot. Many times it happens like it is only a one-time purchase, mostly in projects. But if you are in a manufacturing, if you are also in a trading, then you have to continuously buy. So you'll have to do a proper evaluation of multiple customers, multiple suppliers, both the things. So from import perspective, you have to evaluate the suppliers. Now, what you should look, if you go with the perspective that I want to buy only a cheap unit or a low cost, more than cheap at the wrong word, then you'll end up in buying a cheap product, which is not your interest finally. So you have to balance it, look at his quality control systems, define what you want to do as from your perspective, where you want to position your traded product or whatever you're buying, how is your final product, and then go step by step. Just don't jump into it, and just don't get tempted by the lowest cost that you're going to get it. Look at various other aspects also. And what is the warranty is going to support? Is he really going to support if required on your technical matters also? These are the balancing points, I would say. So just don't go look at his infrastructure, audit his factory. Like if your OEM is your customer is going to audit you, you go and audit it. And have your own judgment of what is happening and build relations over a period of 2 to 3 years. Because I know most of us go to China. Chinese have been a supplier to the world, and they judge what is likely to be our behavior very quickly. You may feel that is a junior person there, but they judge it. And if they feel that this is not a long-term partner, then their behavior completely changes. That's what I can say.
Amazing. Amazing. That's a great input. Mr. Deepak, I have a question for you. Is it keeping finished good inventory beneficiary for the business? I mean, like you were talking about raw material raw material to be kept. You are also talking about finished good. Both of them as an inefficiency. So what according to you? Should we keep finished good? Is it beneficial?
Yeah. So, obviously from a entrepreneur perspective, there is a temptation to keep finished good inventory so that when the customer order comes, I deliver him immediately. But, but that doesn't build a very effective or efficient supply chain. So it all depends on the type of business a manufacturer is or a trader is, So on one side of the matrix, you have, let's say, a company, I'm just talking at a very abstract level, making one product. Okay. And so keep everything finished product, but that in reality doesn't happen. You have multiple products. So we'll come to the most complex thing when you have a lot of products or SKUs that you offer to your end customer. Now with that, a role of engineering function become very important. So at the start of the supply chain, you have raw material, and then you have sub-assemblies, and then you have finished product. So now, how engineering function can play effective role is to have as less sub-assemblies as possible. Obviously, if you have very few sub-assemblies, keep in sub-assemblies. But if you have too many finished product SKUs, my wisdom is take a tough call. Keep very high raw material and very little or nil finished good inventory, so that you build a very good fluidity, flexibility in the manufacturing, in the supply chain. As soon as the order comes, you're able to make the SKU which is required by the end customer. So my wisdom is always, if you have many SKUs, multiple product company, keep maximum raw material, little or no finished good inventory.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
Ajit, one more point that I wanted to add here is,
Sure.
when you're importing specifically, you need to have your specifications written down correctly, because there should not be a gap between what I felt and I will discuss later. There should be a clear specifications and your expectations. So that will define both what your expectations of quality, and the overseas supplier will exactly know what you want, and he will quote as per that. Sorry, a last moment addition.
Great. Yep, perfect. Mr. Roy, why is it important for suppliers to get engaged at a very early stage of development, whether it's with vendor, with customers? I mean, do you really have to get engaged, or how does it work?
Yeah, Ajit, I think in various different, during presentations, I repeatedly kept mentioning that communication is very important, either way, whether with the customer or with the supplier. So when I say communication, means basically it's early stage of involvement, because what happens, as I told you, suppose I'm an air conditioner manufacturer, I'm very good at designing the air conditioner, right? I may not be know what goes into a compressor, or what goes into a motor, or what goes into a plastic parts or sheet metal. So that's me as a air conditioner manufacturer. Now, if I see myself as a motor manufacturer or a component manufacturer, I know how this component can be made most efficiently and competitive. So when I engage with my customer at early stage, I can help in designing the component which I'm going to make as a supplier. Otherwise, that design may be over-designed, and unless it is a costing, because then I have no option but to make as per the customer requirement, because by that time the design is already frozen, and 6-8 months have already passed. At that point of time, if I get a component to develop, I have no option but to follow. But if I am engaged 6 months before, I can help the end manufacturer to say that I am motor manufacturer, you have this kind of specification, which is good enough for application, because he will understand application and then suggest, okay, this is the optimum design by which your cost will come down, which I can do in the when I'm getting involved in the early stage, not when the 7, 8, 10 months have already passed. I can't go back. Same thing with my supplier also. So having done that, I should involve my supplier also, because he knows his job better than I do. So that is one part. Secondly, it has to happen early stage, because later it may be too late actually. Then later, even if you do cost reduction, value engineering, you may still not come to that level of competitiveness, which otherwise you would have been able to get at the beginning of when the design is at the very nascent stage. What you call it, phase 0, phase 1 stage is what we call it actually.
Okay. We have a question from Rajan Bhimra. He's asked this question. He's from Bombay. In the current scenario, what would be the way forward to compete with the Chinese, specifically with respect to service valve manufacturing in India? Any of you who can answer the question?
What would be the way forward to compete with? I think this question came in earlier session also, specifically a service valve, I remember.
Yeah, he was there. Rajan did ask because that's the manufacturing he's into. So
Yeah.
he's saying that, his competition is with Chinese specifically. So anyway, you would have any ideas for him?
No, so I think last time also answered this question, and that remains same in the sense that it's definitely the product or component which he has chosen is very competitive, and currently no Indian manufacturer is able to compete with him because the kind of the kind of component landed cost that we are getting, even in spite of paying the custom duty that we have. So there are two things. One is the raw material cost is pretty high because brass goes into it, and the value addition as a percentage raw material is very limited. So there are two things are there. One is with the government coming out with the incentive, some incentive, definitely he can definitely take advantage of that. Subsequent years, the government is going to increase the custom duty. So obviously, China the sourcing become less and less competitive. Third, very important thing is you should not, when you're talking to your customer, don't compare only the landed cost, because what happens, like when you're importing any product, the basic custom duty as well as the GST you are paying upfront when you're clearing it. So even if you have a credit from the customer, you're not getting 100% credit actually. So when you're dealing with locally, there are two advantages from the customer's point of view, which Rajan can take advantage. Is that I'm giving upfront, so you don't have to order in advance, because when you're importing it, you have to plan 2-3 months in advance, and you have to keep enough buffer because of the uncertainties of import actually. So you are having a working capital high, number one. Number two, 50% you are paying upfront when you're clearing the customer, even if you have credit terms with the supplier, but 40, depending on like 18% is the GST and around 12%. So 40% roughly is you are paying upfront. Whereas locally, when you are buying, you are probably getting credit. So if you're giving credit, price it accordingly. Otherwise, you take an advance because the raw material content is more, the brass is more. So there are multiple things probably he has to do. Third is, of course, I mean, you have to have a machinery and equipment, which is what probably the Chinese are using, or something similar to that, so that you can have more. Again, last and more important, here again, the scale is very important. Very, very, if you are not catering to at least 50% of the industry requirement or 40% industry requirement, you may not be competitive to China. The scale again is here. What I was talking about, scale is, this is a product where without scale, you will not be competitive.
Amazing, Rajan. That's a really tough. Sorry, go ahead, Mr. Bambare.
Just to add to this, my suggestion would be, like the gentleman should get somehow, some way, he should find out to get tied up with the brass manufacturer, because that is what is critical. There should be a minimum wastage of brass. He should be able to recycle brass, because as Roy said, it is brass, one steel spindle, and then rest is all machining. So how does it design with a minimum content of the material that is going in? How does he vertical integrate? Now he may not be in position to buy manufacturing brass, but he should have a long-term tie-up with somebody so that he gets the better price of brass.
And to add, keep a watch on working capital, because here is one product. If you're not keeping a watch on working capital and the leakages that I talked about, then it'll be difficult. Maybe subsequent years with the duty going up, probably life would be easier, but to begin with.
Okay. I think there's one big question here. I think for high value, low margin manufacturing, cost of capital is very important. You just spoke about it. How do you bridge the gap, this cost of capital between our country and the Chinese?
Frankly, what is the cost of capital in China itself is not known. So I don't know how to compare it. Then only you can bridge it.
Yeah,
so,
I guess so.
Land cost, soft loans, it is a very gray area. I don't know. Roy, what is your thoughts?
Yeah, but only thing is, I think I mean, currently off late, of course, the cost of capital has definitely come down than what it used to be earlier. Again, depending on the product. I mean, because government is coming out with a lot of PLI incentive in many other sectors also. If one of those sectors, probably that's the advantage you can get. But otherwise, yes, I mean, so what I would say, like, Chinese manufacturers are going to become more and more expensive with every passing year. That is for sure. Like what has happened with Japanese, actually. Japanese have moved up the value chain. China will also be do. So with that perspective, in the long run, definitely India has an opportunity, no doubt about it. Now, whether it's 2 years down the line, 3 years or 5 years, difficult to say. Particularly if the current situation, how long COVID will continue, what kind of market will develop, what kind of volumes will go, actually. But China definitely is becoming expensive, and there's no doubt about it, because wage bills has gone up there. Other thing is like those what you call compliances and all, which was very lax in China. The government started becoming more and more stricter on that, which definitely increased the cost of manufacturing. So those would definitely benefit India. So I can see a trend, but depend on which industry, what product and all. It may be vary between 2 to 5 years, or maybe depends on that, actually. But I can see a silver lining there for sure.
Just to add, Ajit, here, we have seen that, look at other industries. The auto component manufacturers definitely have succeeded. One. Yeah. If you look at the mobile manufacturing, of course, supported by Make in India movement, have succeeded. Auto, definitely. So if what is my own feeling is what is happening in auto, it will happen in air conditioning industry, because the scale will build up.
Correct. Absolutely. Great, Rajan. Rajan, I think you've got a lot of food for thought. Maybe some real hard truths hit on to you directly, but I think it's let's take it as a challenge for innovation. Awesome. So one last comment, actually, from Krishna Prasad. He said that today keeping substantial raw materials, especially commodities like copper, is fetching good margins due to continuous price increase. This also should be a point of consideration, shouldn't it be? So he's literally hedging now. He's saying, I don't have to sell it to a customer. I should just keep it with me.
It's a dangerous game, I would say. If you are good at it, you don't have to do anything, frankly speaking. But it's a dangerous thing, actually. So I don't know, if you're manufacturing, hedging is what you should be doing, because you never know. Because when you stop going, it's not in our hand, and a lot of big people play on this, actually. So you never know which side of the fence you are at any given point of time. Today you may be making money, tomorrow you don't know, actually. So if you are into hedging business, if that's the only thing, then fine. But if you're into manufacturing, I don't think it's an advisable approach. Current situation is fine, but you never know. Tables can turn anytime.
Yeah, so that's a warning bell for you, Krishna Prasad. Keep that in mind. But awesome. I think we have way overshot our time.
Yeah.
We're getting a lot of comments. People have thanked you. Paras has just said that, thank you for actually stepping out and helping the MSME of the HVACR trade. So I guess all our members are very thankful to you for taking this time out and putting these 6 sessions together, step by step, and detailing it and being patient enough to answer all these questions. I don't think we've ever had a session like this where, various parts of the manufacturing has been so detailed, explained in so much of detail. So thank you very much, everybody. Thank you to all our viewers. You can feel free to write to us. We will make sure that these questions are answered again. Next Friday, we have the 5th session, which is the 21st of May, and that's going to be on manufacturing, engineering, and quality. And Mr. Roy and Mr. Bambure will be presenting it together. So look forward to next Friday. Thank you very much. Thanks a lot, and see you next week, same time on Friday at 6:30. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Ajit.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.